It's time to react to the ex-atheist subreddit reaction of me reacting to them. Breaking it down even further, it would be me reacting to the former non-believers in God's reaction to my reaction of their community. Someone said they stumbled across an interesting post on our atheism and it made them think. Glad I made somebody think. This was my post about our ex-atheism. If you recall, that's actually one of my more popular videos from last month, me reacting to this subreddit about people who were formerly atheists and no longer atheist. As I said in the intro, it's the most convoluted thing. People who have no belief in God are atheists. People who no longer have no belief in God are ex-atheists. So it's a double negative. It's like the Waluigi mirror conundrum thing. But my post is essentially saying that I think there's a lot of coping going on. And people are just, charging whatever beliefs they have for whatever reason, was more or less the message there. And then the comments in that thread were all over the place, but the well is a bit poisoned with this much more exaggerated comment here, talking about theists all having mental illness and divorcing themselves from reality while reality itself disagrees. Is this an edgy comment? Yes. Is it good to be edgy, though? I don't fully disagree. And this second comment is what gets people riled up into their perceived straw man of what an atheist is. But I do think it is fair to be edgy when there are Christian leaders who are committing fraud, committing sexual scandals, raping minors. So, I don't disagree with what Nothing's Original says really at all. But it does kind of tarnish the image of me trying to be a bit more, I guess, open, I suppose, the idea of religion. But nothing against him. However, that does change how the conversation goes, that it's not just about this post, it's about the post and that comment. And that comment and this post leads this ex-atheist, can I just say like theist, I guess, this theist, to say that there are two different types of people. He categorizes them into people who don't share their beliefs. They're saying that they're naive and clueless, or that they're stupid or brainwashed. And I think that's an interesting point. I guess it's to say that people who are non-believers will say that they're either naive or they're brainwashed. But I don't think that those are mutually exclusive. I think that these are actually more or less synonyms. I think really what they're saying is more that there are people who try to be sympathetic and people who are more aggressive with their language, I suppose. Because really there's no substantive difference from what I'm saying to what the second person is saying. Just that it is more aggressive of a message here, and mine is a bit more verbose. So that's really the only difference there. I think if you want to make actually a more substantive difference between the types of believers, it would be people who are convinced that their belief is correct, and so that's why they believe it. And as an outsider, if you disagree with that belief system, you would say that they are deluded. You would say that they are misled, or you could say that they're naive. Or they know what they're purporting is a lie, in which case they would be a con artist, right? They would be a grifter. So that's, I think, the real two categories that you can break it down to. I think most people are misguided. And within that misguided sphere, I think there are levels to it, and there are some still bits of, I guess, mental gymnastics done, i.e., especially within like a really cloistered, really oppressive religious sphere like JWs, or Mormons, where you have so much societal pressure to lose if you leave from the religion. There are the pragmatic aspects of it, i.e., maybe I don't know about all the truth of this, but this community, this sense of belonging, my workplace, the people all around me are within this community, so it's hard for me to lose this tribe. And of course, tribalism is one of the key aspects of being a human being. So that's something we can never really escape from. Last time I pulled a reference to South Park about the atheist wars in a millennia or something like that. But that is something that we can never escape from. Then I think there are people, though, who are being manipulative, who are acknowledge that this, this belief system or this religion is not true, but they're using it to their own gain and their own benefit, which I think is more so prone to the people who actually stand to benefit. So people in positions of power. So let's move back to the post and see what the reactions are. The first one is just saying you need to get off Reddit, social media if you want quality debates. Format does not provide anything good. I am going to be pedantic and disagree. I mean, any sort of debate made by intellectuals or scholars will also be put simultaneously on social media. Now, if it's for the case of people that are only existent on social media and only those debates that are present on social media, yeah, I'm prone to agree. And sure, I think it is fair to get off the internet and have more of these conversations to get a lot more out of that. Speaking to people in the real world, you can't be as polarizing one way or the other. You can't. Now, I am trying to be a bit more of myself lately, though, since I have stepped out of my original, religious coddling. I've become an adult, lived in my own world. Even on my Facebook now, I'm openly anti-theistic. And if people from my childhood want to, pretend to not see that or whatever, that's fine by them. I'd rather just do me and not have to filter it. If you want to debate, find better spaces, sure, whatever. The comment you pinpointed, it is empty of substance. So yeah, again, this is just the point made without the context around it, I think is the second one, i.e. religious people are deluded. And then it's emotional ad hominem rant. I think the only ad hominem part is, I suppose, saying that people are mentally ill if they're religious. Otherwise, I think it's fair that this is more so just attacking religion itself than people. And I think people will be quite defensive on an ex-atheist subreddit. The labels in and of itself are, quite excessive. And I'm actually surprised there are 6,000 people subscribed here. I could say it even written by a bot. Okay. Yeah, I guess there's a lot of sameness in many of the arguments done by atheists. But why is that? It's because we see the same tried arguments from Christian apologists all over the time. So it's a mirror really reflecting back on the Christian diaspora. Let's look at the next one. It's just our atheism. Nothing good can come out of there. Damn. I do think that that's unfortunate that it is blacklisting a whole community for that. And, this is just an example of, I think, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I guess our atheism has a cred for being cringy, socially inept people talking online. But for the same reason I talked in my last video about really all of these terrible pieces of news of people trying to contact, isolated tribes and intentionally bring them diseases for the purpose of evangelism. People who are youth leaders in their church who are also child molesters and pedophiles, people who are taking advantage of all of the people around them and taking money from people, fraud, right, in the name of religion. This happens all of the time. So saying things like, don't go to that subreddit, nothing good come out of there. I do think that it is a weapon used by Christian monolith or all of these other religious ideas that try to say, no, don't look at our problems, don't look at our problems, don't look at our problems. I think we do need an opposing community, people who are secular for the sake of being secular and point out the flaws with religion, to hold them accountable, or at least try to, or at least document the fact we've tried to. If you then say the community is no good anymore and you remove the community, then now we can't even talk about it. And all of the predatory things done by church leaders, all of the harassment, everything just gets to go unchecked. So here's a longer one. A lot of coping in secular circles for almost the exact reason mentioned here. I'm not sure what that means. I don't know why I would cope with the non-existence of a God. I honestly don't understand that. I guess this is going with the presupposition that every non-believer wants to be free to sin as much as they want, right? They're coping by saying God doesn't exist, that they don't want to sin. Maybe I am, excuse me, retarded, but I actually do not understand what they mean by coping in secular circles. Furthermore, and I'm sorry, before I move on from this point, let me also add that from people who leave religion, it is actually quite the opposite of coping. It is coming to grips with a new reality that you understand. Coping would be still holding on to that idea of a God when you're pressed with better information otherwise. So that's part of the reason too. In my book I'm working on, living in a universe where no one is watching. I'm still working on the title, but there is a huge part in the deconversion and the deconstruction process where you have to grapple with the fact that we're alone in the universe, there is no God watching over us, and all of that nihilistic truths to the world. But that doesn't mean that our own existence itself has to be and feel nihilistic. So those are the things. I suppose you could call that coping, but in a healthy sense, in that, maybe we collect some hobbies, maybe we create meanings for ourselves, is the coping there. But I don't understand what he means if it's like a perfect flip-flop of the other way around. I do think that people holding on to religion and the ideas of afterlife are coping with the fact that there is no afterlife. The existence of religion too in like our mammal brains is because of our trying to cope with a lack of understanding. There originally existed a pantheon of gods and polytheistic, what Christians might say pagan religions all over the world, because humans, we didn't have science yet. We didn't have reasoning to the extent we do now. And so we would create gods and spirits and kamis in Japanese folklore, for example, to understand how the world works. And we understand now that it's not spirits and gods causing nature to move, but nature itself and its various, parts and pieces, right? So the existence of gods is in fact a coping mechanism that we have created as humans. And if you're any religious person in the world, the odds are that unless you have some sort of absurdist pantheistic view that somehow all religions are true, you also have some exclusionary portions of your belief. I think Christopher Hitchens said it best that if you're Christian, you're almost atheist. You just reject one less God than I do from the thousands of gods in the pantheon of human anthropological existence, right? So has always been coping where theism exists. Let's move on. Furthermore, it's not clear that people are religious primarily to cope with the thought of heaven, afterlife, and God. Sure, I agree, but this is just an insight that you can understand philosophically. It makes sense from an argumentative perspective. People believe in something that's not rational because they can't contend with the reality otherwise. You see people, if you go to go to the scams subreddit, some of the saddest things you see ever of people's parents, relatives that get duped into these huge scams, losing so much money. I've seen some of the biggest stories there are people losing tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars because they're just, what's the word, I'm forgetting the word. There's pig baited. Please in the comments let me know. I know it's not pig fucked, but it's basically where you just kind of like nurture somebody over time to be your buddy, to gain a relationship of trust, and then suddenly that friend recommends a place to invest your money for cryptocurrency, and that person who's being their friend and gave them just a site recommendation is actually from the background somewhat in cahoots with that website itself. It's not a legitimate organization, and you lose all your money. But people, even when confronted to the fact that this is a scam, they continue to give them their money over and over and over again because they can't cope with the fact that that is a scam. So it is completely possible and totally a reason that people hold on to the idea of God and afterlife, because they cannot cope with no heaven. They can't cope with the existence otherwise. But to say it's the majority, I don't know. Did I claim it was the majority? Real quick fact check. Did I say it's the majority? I think it was, but one of the biggest trends I feel. Atheism is too depressing. It doesn't fragment the if you want somebody to help, it didn't work in person. Some yeah, I say people believe all things for all sorts of reasons. I do think never once did I say, okay, wow, there you go, misrepresenting what I said. Never once do I say that the majority of people are religious because they can't cope with the lack of an afterlife. No, I don't think. I think probably if you had a gun to my head and you made me pick why are people religious, the biggest reason, societal upbringing, because their parents are religious and their community is religious. That's the biggest reason. The vast majority of people have been religious in some way, but religions are very diverse. Yes, religions are very diverse. People across cultures do not explain who or God in the same way, nor explain what happens to us after we die in the same way. Completely agree, and that's another interesting point I talk about, why I'm atheist, not ignist or ExAtheist video. One of the big arguments against even the term atheist itself is that it acknowledges that there is a standardized term for what God is, or a standardized definition. Now, I still disagree with this argument because I think even if there's not an agreed upon scientific definition for what God is, I don't think that is a reason to disregard a word. For example, the word air itself is defined loosely on what we understand as this environment around us, but it could refer to the air in a metaphorical sense. It could be the fact that air isn't, 80% nitrogen, 20% oxygen or whatever. It could be a different measure of gases. It could be any sort of thing. You don't have a standardized definition for zombies. You don't have a standardized definition for ghouls or pixies, yet we use these words and understand what they mean. So I think it's still okay to use the word God or theism and have a vague understanding. But I do agree with that point still, though, that it's not something that is a codified, really hard and fast definition, like maybe the name of a molecule or something like that. That's fine. But sure, I agree that there's diversity of thought. Even the case of Christianity, which has, sure, there's Gnosticism. There have been many sects and splits in Christianity. There are all different kinds of thought there. So this argument is shadow boxing, as we call it in the professional Reddit debater space. But he's basically making an argument against something I never said, saying that most people are religious because they want to cope with the lack of an afterlife. That's never what I said. So that's what he's trying to argue against. The other claims made about religious. So yeah, this is the other guy's comment. I don't really care, so I'm just gonna move on. I hate when people post our atheism here. So bit of pretentiousness. No post in that subreddit is worth anyone's time. A bit more pretentiousness. Not even worth scrolling past it, but I have to anyways. Oh, there's like 3-tiered cake pretentiousness. Mind you, he's writing about this on the ex-atheist subreddit. So I don't know if there's like much of a distinguishing tier of social strength there. I only leave this comment. I hope it dissuades others from posting from that sub. I'm not even a religious. This is a pick me. Pick me culture is where you're the minority that's being oppressed, but you say pick me to the oppressors because you want to be in the in group, even though you're not. So you think of, oh my God, I can't remember the name. It's been so long since I've seen them. But there was a trans guy trans girl who is right wing, and she's like, no, and what they say about being trans, and she's for stopping multi-use bathrooms and things like that. She's against laws that are for transgender people, so completely against her own interests. Oh my God, I'm gonna kill myself because I can't think of the name. But the transgender person is siding with the extremist right-wing people because she wants to be picked. She's a pick-me. She wants to fit in with the in group, even though they're oppressors. So this is, I do not like to insult people, but I will be forthright in that this is a pathetic post full of hypocrisy. I trying to be elitist on Reddit while posting on Reddit, and pick-meism, not even religious or spiritual. And posting about the cringe of atheism. So there's all, come on, dude. There's like all sorts of people from all sorts of life, all from everywhere, going everywhere. So to categorize within, one part of the internet and say this is cringe, shouldn't go there. It's just kind of doing a broad brushstroke. That's not fair to anybody. Okay. Yeah, and then even someone else talks about tribalism here. I don't care about reading this whole thing. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I don't know what's interesting about it. Typical atheism brain rot. I think brain rot is referring to the new trend of just AI-generated nonsense, so I would disagree with that, but what have you. It was my post, so I guess, I'm going to disagree with it. First one even admits living in an existential nightmare. So enlightened. Yeah, we do live in an existential nightmare. Is me saying that being enlightened? I could flip it on your head. This person is a Christian based off of their tag. So I could just say, wow, this Christian even admits that they're saved by Jesus and going to heaven. So enlightened. That's the equivalent of what he's saying. So I think this just expresses, another point in tribalism. and that there's not really any substance to their comment here. It's just they're trying to pick a team and root with them. While I understand they're so shallow, I do not wish to engage with them. Again, so another layer of pretentiousness. They're better than me. They're better than the atheist subreddit, whatever the case is. My best friend was an atheist. We often talked. It's just different IRL. You can't look forward to look like a rabid pack animal. Do I look like? Is this a rabid pack animals speaking? I'm saying, people believe all sorts of things for all sorts of reasons. Emotional, rationally, societal upbringing, and people change all belief sources for all sorts of reasons. Is this a rabid pack animal? Is this a shallow comment? Again, the second comment is posted here, but I do think this is just a case of taking my argument and then putting it to the side here. Let me get the full camera on to really demonstrate the point. Here is the argument, okay? Here's the argument, and then the ex-atheist subreddit, they say, yeah, look at this argument. This is such a dumb fucking argument. That's basically what they're doing. Okay, reality disagree. So this is the second comment. I don't really care. So again, another pretentious start off. Nothing good comes out of our atheism. Most of these posts are mocking religion with the same age-old arguments to be posed. I actually let's just test this through. What are most of the posts doing on our atheism as of now? 12 days, comment old, so it might be a bit different. But let's just go to here's our atheism, our favorite subreddit. Okay, what is it? Is this mocking religion? No, this is 22 minutes ago. A pair of billionaire preachers built the most powerful political machine in Texas. So this is a piece of news. So that's not really making fun of religion. Oh, this is my post I made about news. So again, it is not mocking religion, but rather making an informative post. I guess you could call this like an op-ed category. Or just taking more. Okay, sure. This is, I guess, kind of making fun. Okay, 1 point there. Arkansas judge blocks 10 commandments. Okay, this is a news. Okay, news. I guess op-ed. I guess, yeah, you could say this is mocking religion. Sure. Most Christians have no ideas. I don't think this is mocking religion. I think this is rather looking at how most Christians literally do not, and I think Christians themselves would agree to this. They do not know where their religion comes from. So I would just say this is more just like an opinion, thread there. Logic related piece of info. Okay, looking for a resource, and then I'm asking a question about the religion, posting about Christianity, asking a question, news. So if we look, just a handful, I looked at maybe 10 posts there. I think 2 of them were outright mocking religion, but even so, it's not like super vicious. It's just people who are leaving religion and venting for the most part, or people who have been persecuted by religious people and are talking about that, are people who are constantly, molested or perplexed by religious people and are commenting about that. The rest of the posts, and the majority of the posts, are news articles, and then people talking about constructive discussions around religion and atheism. So that is wrong. Again, it's a case of, here we go. It's a case of the ex-atheist subreddit looking at this and then saying, look at how dumb this is. They're looking at they're shadow boxing, straw manning, however you want to phrase it. The argument that religion is a logical coping mechanism has always been a funny one to me, at least. Again, I am not saying that is all religion is. I say forthright, people believe religion for all sorts of things. I think this is one of the big facets of religion, in that it provides a way for us to live eternally because people fear death. All of these were fine, logical, and beautiful written age articles. What? Give me them. Please give me them. Not just forget them. And additionally, there are age-old arguments for why the earth is flat, why molecules are from these, elements of fire, earth, wind, and it doesn't mean that they're right. It just means that there exists age-old arguments doesn't mean that they're true. So the fact that there are, you could call them beautiful, that's your opinion, dog. Age-old arguments for a thing does not mean it's true. No, just forget them. People only want to believe because it makes them feel better about death and our meaningless existence. Again, I didn't say that, but whatever. The points they make on that sub half the time don't counter anything. I think they're just punching the air right now. I feel like they're countering the pretty fundamental argument. I mean, we just looked at the post from the last couple of days, right? And then here's somebody talking about the Epicurean paradox. This is the problem of evil, right? This is a classic argument. To take it back to you, say that there are beautifully written rage or old arguments for theism, while there are old arguments against theism as well. Even reflections like the first slide are meaningless in terms of trying to understand truth. Meaningless is my post meaningless in terms of trying to understand truth? Is it meaningless in terms of trying to understand? I guess if you say in terms of trying to understand truth itself, it's meaningless, but I would be pressed to find then any posts that are in trying to understand truth that are meaningful. You're talking about like the ontology, right? And so my post isn't talking about ontology, it's talking about like the psychology, the philosophy of believers. So it's kind of a wrong category there. I'm not trying to understand truth. I'm trying to understand the truth about how believers feel is the point of the post. There are no arguments in these two slides. Again, the second slide, they're saying there's no arguments, but the point is just that people believe things for a number of reasons, and one of them can be coping. That is an argument. You would have to tell me why that is not the case, right? So again, they're punching the air. I'm sure the first post is an interesting reflection. Okay, so is it completely meaningless, or it is an interesting reflection? This guy is kind of not clearing up their thoughts, but it certainly isn't an uncommon one. Of course, it's not uncommon, because people all over the world have told the exact same monolithic message that you need this religion, this one key, this one road to victory of your soul, or whatever variety of that. And then after introspection or whatever reason, people leave religion and understand that it was a lie. So yeah, that's why it's not uncommon, because it's a very common experience that unfortunately many people are subjected to. It's just the logical and sad reality of atheism. Again, even if you think it's sad, it doesn't make it any less true. And I can say the exact same thing about religion and Christianity. Your logic is all the same all the time, and it's sad. I don't think that. I just think that people are, again, convinced for a multiplicity of reasons. The second slide is really amusing. Okay, sure. Ultimately, I think it's important to read what people say about beliefs no matter what. We seemingly can only benefit from seeing the other side. Okay. However, maybe Reddit isn't the best place to do that. I feel like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, right? They're trying to be like, yeah, we should in the end, we got to know all of each other's thoughts, man. We got to understand each other. But in the middle, they're like, but this is meaningless. It's so stupid. Anything from our atheism is bad. But in the end, we should all know each other better because we're human, something like that. So I think it is hypocritical within the realm of this comment itself a bit. But again, people are just commenting here. They're not really thinking, I think, as they're typing, this is off, these are on, is my predilection here. So I guess I can't be too critical. In reality, it's probably rather rare. The OP was talking about what people think that they're deluded, or people think that they're a sheep or whatever. People are social animals, and say for academic circles, you can discuss religion once or twice, and that's it. You either convert to your peers' religion or coexist despite differences for the sake of convenience. This is the one comment I completely and full-heartedly agree with. Christian, not an ex-atheist. The post from Atheist subreddit is like the comment in the second picture, nothing original. So there's a bit of agreement here, actually, in that, yeah, the crux of what I'm saying and what the second comment is saying are the same. People are misguided to believe in something. Again, the comment there is just much more aggressive and forthright, and uses, it says it's a mental illness, which again, I do actually agree with to a certain extent. Like, have you seen how religious some of these religious people get? We're talking about religion, right? Like, people get crazy about this stuff, man. But and nothing original. Yeah, I guess nothing original, sure. But again, the only reason, if you think atheists say the same old tired arguments, it's because religious people only bring the same old tired arguments. So it's the exact same thing to talk about. The only issue then is there is just the ongoing oppression and destruction that religion brings into the world. So that's why we should continuously talk about it. Uh, let's move on. Personally, I've learned that if they aren't bringing a valid critique against a certain religion or against a particular argument for the existence of God, then it's no point in taking it seriously. So this is kind of like an all or nothing approach. If you can't discuss the existence of God in a legitimate, critical way, then it's not worth talking to you. I think this is a really dangerous sentence because you can now take this alleged existence of God proposition and use it to disregard any sort of criticisms, any sort of critiques against what an institution is actually doing on a day-to-day basis. For example, the oppression of gay people is codified into 99% of Christian doctrine. There are some scant Christian denominations that hold more liberal theology, as they might say, and I'm glad that those exist, but they are a minority and are actively persecuted within the Christendom sphere and Hindu and Muslim spheres. They are also anti-LGBT. But if you think that those gods or a god of that caliber sort of exists, then you think that the anti-LGBT position is the correct position. So long as you can't disprove the existence of their god, they will never loosen their grip on anti-LGBT ideology, right? So there is absolutely nothing you can do to talk to this person unless you are somehow disproving the existence of their God, which is, depending on how stubborn someone is, very hard to do. Because for as many contradictions as you can provide, as many arguments against the feasibility of a God or God's existence or the truth of a religion, I guess this goes back to the point of coping, right? If you can always create a reason to hold a belief in something and you are actively interested in holding on to that belief regardless of outcome, then nothing you can say will move these people. And so if they have this idea that nothing against the existence of God can be argued against, and if there is no argument like that, then it's not worth taking seriously, then there's nothing you can do. And they'll just continue to rain havoc against queer people, against women, against gay people, against people of color, right? Against minorities. So there's nothing that you can do to win this person over. These are just emotional argument, borderline ad hominem attack. Again, saying it's just an emotional argument. I think that you can have quite powerful emotional arguments that are effective. And the fact that a Christian can do this and just kind of disregard it, or a Hindu or a Muslim or whatever, then it is quite disturbing, right? We talk about genocide of the Canaanites in their own scripture, for example, enslavement of other people, right? Or a recent tragedy of Camp Mystic, right, in Texas with floodings. All of these things, you say how tragic it is, how terrible it is for a God to do this. This is an emotional argument. And they just disregard it. They say, no, that's what God does, and it's God's will. Absolutely psychopathic behavior if you think of them trying to draw a parallel to any other sort of person in power, right? Like a parent who lets their child die, or a city mayor who, sends people to be murdered. You would be absolutely abhorred with their behavior, regardless of their level of status or power. But if it was with their God concept that they are married to, then they accept it. That's the most disturbing thing I think about religion. I want something serious. Okay, I'm only serious. So you can talk to me if you want, Kudor, whatever, which is why I don't take arguments from social media seriously. Again, it's like the first comment. You're just saying if it's on social media, it's not a good argument. I don't think that's a good argument. And ironically, this is something on social media. So, hate to be the pedantic guy here, but I mean, not that nobody could ever bring something valid, okay, taking back your own points as you eat them, but I prefer more academic discussions from people with a degree in some related field to some degree. I'm going to go on an assumption that this person might like some of the arguments that a lot of popular apologists might say online, and most of these people who work in that sort of like reasoning for God ontological arguing space don't hold actual degrees that are, I mean, maybe they have some degrees in theology, but most of these people aren't like trained academics per se, right? So it's still just pop culture arguments. I think a great example of this is like if you look at the Slavoj Žižek versus Jordan Peterson debate from years back. Slavoj Žižek is actually an accomplished author, socialist, theorist, and philosopher. And then Jordan Peterson is former psychologist, current charlatan. And you could see just the level of difference. There was no match between them. It was just a sad thing. But the thing is that everybody is a Jordan Peterson within the apologetic sphere. So it is what my name is Forever Sophist, I say, as a moniker. But they are literal sophists. Let's move on. I spent a lot of time researching this, okay? And I don't think there is another explanation for our existence that makes sense. So you need a divine creator to have the universe make sense. I think that's a very lack of creative, ironic to say, but it's a very uncreative way to look at the world. Nothing about how we have looked over our evolutionary history or ecology or the geology of the world, anything in that regard, has required the existence of a creator. You can see from a timeline of fossil records in the Earth itself, how over the 5 billion years, I think, the Earth has existed, sediment has built upon itself. You can see a clear timeline for how life has come and gone extinct within the world's existence. Nothing about that indicates a sort of creator behind it. So if you think that our existence requires an explanation that is married to a God, then I think that you're not being seriously introspective enough. Which is why I humbled myself when I was agnostic atheist and I swallowed the pill. What pill? This is kind of just like a vague bomb, I guess, just about religion in general. Did my research. What research? I would like some sources, please. Like the Wikipedia. Like this article was lacking sources. Disclaimer. That's what I'd like from this comment. And accepted a religion that I personally can say I believe is the absolute truth. I like how they don't say what religion it is, though. It's the perfect way to kind of like, like a rogue, just kind of like get the stab in and run out. But I also do see a trend, though, with a lot of these comments is that they do try to have the Schrodinger's cake. They're saying like, don't take anything on social media seriously. Not that they could ever bring anything valid, though. So it's like you want it both ways. You want to make an attack, but not make an attack at the same time. This one is making fun of the fact that I misspelled heaven. I am a typing Jesus. Where is it? This beautiful typo, the best typo. But I basically forgot the letter N. So he owned me there. And that is it. Yeah. Oh, there's one more. Last one. Last two, perhaps. Let me go to the bottom here. Whoop. Look, there's me. Hey, wait a second. That's me. Ha ha ha. And then last guy. This is a perfect example of what I mean by ideological possession. The Our Atheism poster can't get out of the self-reinforcing narrative in his own mind or see past it. Okay, we're kind of talking about like my dad is this strong, my dad is this strong, well, my dad could beat up your dad level of arguments here about just like the vibes in general. But you could say that about any group. It is not exclusive to the Our Atheist subreddit and community. Again, humans are tribalistic by nature, so this isn't something unique to religion or lack thereof. This is something that is a feature of our species. So most people are in their own narrative. Most people won't get out of them. Wow. I realize I've talked all this 40 minutes and I've given you so much free content. It's time to pay up, guys, and that is in the form of a subscription. It only costs 1 click. So please, for all the work I put into these videos, consider subscribing so that they can be delivered to you warm and ready to your YouTube front page. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.